Brad Marchand has raised the Stanley Cup once again, but let's be honest, even if he stayed in Boston, likely wasn't going to happen in black and gold.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke to Be. Today is Wednesday, June 18th. Thank you so much for making Locked On Boston Bruins part of your day, your first listen every day. In fact, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Brad Marchand, Stanley Cup winner, but not in Boston. We're going to discuss it. Maybe the final word for now on this whole saga. We're going to talk about why, even with Marchand, the Bruins miles behind the Florida Panthers, what it might take to catch up, why Bruins fans are proud of Marchand and how he elevated the Panthers Cup run, but also why it still hurts and how it symbolizes the closing of a Bruins era. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. That's on X, Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, even TikTok. And you can find me, my hockey thoughts, and dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. I am a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I've been covering this team for various outlets for about 20 years now. Brad Marchand, Stanley Cup champion. I have to confess, I did not watch the end of last night's game. Particularly tired, had to get up early, but also it was just difficult. The ending for me still hurts because of the unfinished business in Boston and two recent pretty good chances for our favorite team to have won, namely 2023 when they lost to those Panthers and 2019 at Game 7 on home ice. Why was he there in the first place? Everydayers will know that I recently broke down all the options the Bruins had with Marchand and how trading him to the Panthers, a team he wanted to go to, for a seemingly low return, but a first-round pick in 2027. It's all the result of this Bruins retool that was spurred on by a slow start this past season, Jim Montgomery fired, Joe Sacco taking over, trade deadline sell-off of Charlie Coyle, Trent Frederick, Brandon Carlo, Justin Brazeau, yes, Marchand, and it all resulted in a record of 33, 39, and 10. Last in the Eastern Conference, the Bruins' worst season in almost 30 years. Jeremy Swayman, of course, missed camp due to contract talks. A very poor season, career worst season following that contract stalemate. Ranked 92nd in goals saved above expected. The Bruins had some underwhelming free agent signings last summer. Elias Lindholm, 7 years, $54.25 million, just 47 points, and played more like a 3 seed than a 1 seed for most of the season. Nikita Zadorov, 6 years, $30 million, led the NHL in penalty minutes and had some defensive lapses throughout the season. The Bruins ranked 29th on the power play, gave up 13 shorthanded goals, worst in the NHL. And this was all exacerbated by Hampus Lindholm missing most of the season, Charlie McAvoy being injured at the Four Nations tournament and not being able to return. Not to mention Brad Marchand getting injured prior to the trade deadline, which may or may not have hurt his value. The Bruins were able to get a first-round pick, which had been a conditional pick. Panthers met those conditions, and it turned into a first in 2027. Other than that, the Bruins just had no secondary scoring either. Outside of Pastrnak, who had 106 points, and Morgan Geekie's 33 goals. Even when Marchand was with the team, the secondary offense was pretty much non-existent. And you see reports coming out today that Trent Frederick could get an 8-year deal from the Edmonton Oilers. I don't know how you look at his season and his postseason and think, yeah, this is a guy we need to extend for another 8 years. When Marchand was with the Bruins, he had 21 goals, 26 assists for 47 points, which was still pretty good production for a guy who just turned 37, but still below what his production had been in his heyday with this team. Florida, in contrast, already a cup caliber team, obviously, having won last year, going to the final the year before that. Marchand was added for a future first. The Bruins held on to some of the salary, so it was a very low financial hit for them as well. And importantly, Marchand was able to go from huge minutes for the Bruins to a third line depth role. His line with Anton Lundell and Eetu Luostarinen outscored opponents 21-7 at 5-on-5, and he chipped in a shorty here and there. And OT winner in Game 2 versus the Oilers. 2 massive goals in Game 5 against the Oilers, and that came after some big goals earlier, especially one an OT winner in round 2 against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So the Bruins, especially after, like you think, a lot of people are saying, how could the Bruins trade Brad Marchand? Look what he did for the Panthers. He's probably going to get maybe a 4-year deal, $8 million, which to me is still a bit rich for a guy who is 37. Even with Marchand in the lineup, the Bruins were struggling to maintain a playoff level. Take him off, they're nowhere near that. And even if he re-signed, the chances of the Bruins winning a cup in the next few years kind of low. And that's why they're exploring perhaps trading the 7th overall pick so that they can expedite that a little bit by acquiring like a legit number 1 center. Lindholm isn't that guy, although he showed some signs near the end of the season with Geekie and Pastrnak. The Bruins, like, in order to compete with a team like the Panthers, they have to get a number 1 center. They have to fix the power play, deepen the blue line, hit on the number 7 pick and or trade that number 7 pick. Probably not relying on your prospect pool. Lysell, Patra, Lori, promising, but not a savior by any stretch. And they need to be kind of bold. Like, Florida made huge swings in trading for Matthew Tkachuk, even adding Brad Marchand, and the Bruins must be willing to do something similar. Florida didn't need to make a splash. They didn't need Brad Marchand to win. They did it last year, but they kind of needed Marchand to win in the sense that he gave them leadership and fresh energy that helped them seal the deal. The Bruins, not 1, 2, even 3 moves away. They needed and still need a full-on reset. And if they want to catch up, it'll take bold moves, better drafting, and a front office willing to roll the dice and swing big here coming up this offseason. For everything the Bruins may have lacked this past season, in the end, Brad Marchand got it right by pretty much picking where he wanted to go at the trade deadline. It was hard to watch for Bruins fans, but we also have every reason to be proud of what he just accomplished, and we'll break down why here as the podcast continues. Look, the Stanley Cup playoffs are over, but there's still at least one more NBA Finals game, and the NBA playoffs. I mean, there's no moment like sitting in an arena and watching someone sink a buzzer beater, right? There's major momentum shifts, can't miss moments, whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player. There's never been a better time to get in on the action with FanDuel. And FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. They got player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. And if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Please do subscribe on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube if you have not already. Each new episode will be automatically added to your feeds for you to download, listen, watch, and enjoy. So I've got mixed emotions, right? On one hand, I'm genuinely happy for Brad Marchand. I didn't watch the celebration live, but I've seen the clips. You see him with his huge family there supporting him. You see him raising the cup, partying with the Panthers. That's a bit tough to swallow. And also, just enjoying life as a Stanley Cup champion. His first cup came in his rookie season in 2011. Second cup at age 37, 14 years later. One of the longest spans between cup wins in NHL history. Not that there haven't been some chances. We'll talk about that in a little bit here. Marchand said he has so much more appreciation now, and it feels completely different. And he was pretty big for these Panthers. In fact, he finished second in Conn Smythe voting behind Sam Bennett. These two have become buds since the Four Nations into Marchand's tenure with the Panthers. And despite Bennett injuring Marchand in the playoffs last year to the Bruins' detriment, and that's where some of the mixed feelings come in. But he had 10 goals, 10 assists in 23 games for the Panthers. Double overtime game-winning goal in Game 2 of the final. A massive 2-goal performance in Game 5 versus Edmonton. That was really the turning point of the series. The Oilers just could not recover and could not force a Game 7 back in Edmonton. He had an OT goal versus Toronto in round 2. And what helped him was that buy-in mentality. He thought he might come in and be like a fourth liner. Just wanted to buy in and help. And he came out and became one of the Panthers' most trusted playoff performers. Panthers GM Bill Zito said he was more special than he could have imagined on and off the ice. He was described as bringing joy and fire by his teammates, a stabilizing, energizing presence. And as Scott McLaughlin wrote on WEEI, he was exactly what Florida needed to keep their edge. This wasn't comes in and he's a token player playing minuscule minutes and not making an impact. This was Brad Marchand vintage performance, almost at his very best and almost willing the Panthers to a Stanley Cup championship, the second of his career, and it establishes his legacy as a two-time Stanley Cup champion. 1,000 plus games, almost 1,000 points, a clutch playoff performer, multiple gold medals at the international level, and make no mistake, he's got his eye on playing for Team Canada at the 2026 Winter Olympics coming up in February in Italy. He is a lock to be a member of the Hall of Fame. Even just based on what he did with the Bruins, he could have gotten in. His number's going to be retired. And again, I really think he helped the Panthers get that extra boost in order to beat Edmonton once again. Not only do you have a player of his caliber skating on a third line role, which is a massive luxury. Think about when the Bruins a few years ago had Taylor Hall on their third line with like Tyler Bertuzzi. They had like one of the best third lines going. They were not able to take advantage of that, of course, but for him to come in and step up in his minutes played to make a huge impact on and off the ice, it gave these Panthers that extra fire because, look, after all the games that they have played over the past couple of years, getting to the final a couple of years ago, losing to the Golden Knights, winning the Cup last year, deep run again this year, you could have seen them falter a bit or get tired or just not losing motivation, but just kind of wearing out. But Marchand came in as an energizing presence, and he didn't just win another cup. He redefined what it means to extend your legacy. No matter the uniform, Bruins fans will always know he was one of the greats. And he is a product of the Boston Bruins. Drafted, developed, leaned on, the captain of this team, and whatever else is in his future. This isn't the same as like Ray Bourque, right? Where he was not able to, franchise legend, was not able to win the cup with the Bruins, was traded, bit of a stint with Colorado, finally got his cup there. This was Brad Marchand already establishing his legacy. It was a down year for the franchise. They decided to go a different direction. And there's really no debate there whether or not that was the smart move to make. He was almost 37 at the time of the trade. He was injured at the time of the trade, so there was some uncertainty on Florida's part as to whether he'd be able to come back and be an effective contributor. And the Bruins didn't want to lose him for nothing, getting a draft pick that they can either use in a couple of years or package in a trade to make more immediate, to get more immediate help. As much as we celebrate him and appreciate his legacy as a member of the Boston Bruins, we can also admit the painful truth that it was not supposed to end this way. He was not supposed to go out, and he's not going out, but he was not supposed to reclaim that former glory as a member of the Florida Panthers. It should have happened with the Bruins, and I'll touch on why we wish it had ended differently here as the podcast continues. Brad Marchand, Stanley Cup champion with the Florida Panthers. And it's hard not to think it's a cup celebration in the wrong jersey. We imagined him handing the cup to Charlie McAvoy or David Pastrnak, not Anton Lundell or Eetu Luostarinen. This was not the ending Bruins fans envisioned. Instead, we are left with memories of Game 7 in 2019 and an unfortunate line change that led to a late first period goal for the St. Louis Blues and tears on the bench, realizing that they had wasted an opportunity to win still with Zdeno Chara, Tuukka Rask, David Krejci, Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand, and with some new guys in the mix, David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy, etc. That would have been, like, if we looked back and saw that they had won that cup, it would have given the core another cup. It would have given Rask one as a starter. Bergeron, Marchand in their primes. And that would have been a fitting ending for that core, just 8 years after winning the cup. Didn't work out that way. And there's some transition. Lo and behold, 2023 President's Trophy, the best regular season in NHL history, the most wins. The Bruins had an absolutely stacked and loaded roster And Don Sweeney went out and did everything he could to maximize that roster, making some trades with the Washington Capitals and the Detroit Red Wings at the trade deadline, dipping into LTIR. Taylor Hall was injured, so they went out and got Tyler Bertuzzi. Again, massive collapse. Who knows? Like, the biggest what if on my mind, on a lot of people's minds today, is Brad Marchand breakaway Game 5 against the Florida Panthers could have ended that series, could have ended Florida's dynasty before it began, and could have altered Boston Bruins history. Like, maybe Bergeron still retires, but at least he goes out on top. Same with David Krejci. But it would cement the legacies of David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy, and of course Marchand, Bergeron. And maybe there's more runway when this season comes along and there's a collapse for this team, which led to this current retool that is getting underway. Marchand, instead, along with a bunch of other guys, traded before the deadline. He was dealt for a future first. Bruins retained some salary to make it work. It made sense, but it still hurt. When things fall apart, he said, Marchand did, you trade pieces, but that doesn't make it easier. He didn't want to go, but he also didn't want to stay on Boston's terms. He wanted to dictate his own terms after playing on team-friendly deals for the majority of his career, and deservedly so. But the Bruins aren't in a position right now where they can remain competitive while giving him $7-8 million per season. Another team will. More power to them. Maybe he can replicate this performance, but maybe also it's just a perfect storm of Brad Marchand at the right time going to the right team. Bergeron's retired. Krejci's retired. Chara's retired. Rask is retired. Marchand's traded. Now a champion elsewhere, and that emotional core that we got so attached to is gone. Fan response has been up and down. I'm proud, but it hurts. That should have been in a Bruins jersey. Stopped watching after they traded him. Bring him back on July 1 for one last run. The reality is he already got a crack at 2 last runs with the Bruins. They had that run in 2019. Don't make that line change and maybe things end differently. They had that golden opportunity in 2023, President's Trophy curse aside. If he scores on that breakaway, and again, it was kind of rushed, it was last second, whatever, it's a completely different thing. And yes, those were learning moments for Brad Marchand, and he was able to say, I'm not taking this for granted, but you shouldn't have taken 2023 for granted after losing in 2019. You shouldn't have taken 2019 for granted after losing in 2013. Any chance you get, especially with guys that you have come up with and not a whole new group, you have to take advantage of. And I will always lament what missed opportunities there were for the Bruins in those couple of years. It's just a real bummer that he went out as a member of the Florida Panthers and not going out. He's still signing somewhere, but at the end of the day, Florida didn't need that trade deadline miracle to win, but adding Brad Marchand gave them playoff scoring, veteran leadership, and emotional fuel that helped seal the deal against a very talented Edmonton Oilers team. He made a great team even better. And that's partly due to Don Sweeney trading him to the team that he wanted to go to. And that kept the return down, as did the fact that he was injured at the time. The Bruins, on the other hand, not 1, 2, maybe even 3 pieces away. They needed a full-scale reset, both on and off the ice. From top-line center, depth, to special teams, to defensive help, injury insurance, and beyond. And also handing the leadership mantle off to the next generation. If the Bruins want to get back in the conversation, it won't be by hoping one guy gets hot and fixes it. It won't be by hanging on to the past. It's going to take bold roster moves, aggressive drafting or use of draft picks, whether it's in taking the best available player or trading that pick. A front office willing to take calculated risks. You can say they did that in hiring Marco Sturm, just like Florida has done. So a major congratulations to Brad Marchand, giving Bruins fans a reason to be proud. Homegrown talent, making good, even if it wasn't in black and gold. But it's still hard to see him. Just that balance of pride and heartbreak. I'm sure I'm not the only one feeling about it. Are you proud? Are you sad? Are you both? Let me know at Locked NHL Bruins. And more importantly, would you want Brad Marchand back in Boston next season if the opportunity is there? I don't see it happening, but who knows? Maybe that's a discussion for another day. For today, a hearty congratulations to Brad Marchand and his family. A well-earned second Stanley Cup. I just wish it had happened in 2019 or 2023, 2013, any year in between. That's it for today's episode, my friends. I had planned on breaking down the development camp roster that was announced yesterday. Maybe we'll jump on that tomorrow. Do check out the Locked On NHL podcast next as your second listen. Of course, it'll be jam-packed with reaction from last night's cup clinching victory for the Florida Panthers. Look, there's no offseason here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We're bringing you daily league-wide stories that matter most with local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Same with Locked On Boston Bruins. Please do take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. And we'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.